Visionary creativity, how new worlds are born. So first, a bit about my background, and my approach to creativity involves lateral thinking, putting together seemingly unrelated things. And so I want to look at my background and see how the broad range of interests maybe came together to become part of my approach. I studied architecture at the University of Pennsylvania, worked with some interesting architects, Harrison and Abramovitz on the Albany Mall, and Ulrich Franzen on new technologies for the city. We were looking at things like predicting Uber in the 60s. And I did some environmental sculpture, a book on the architect Louis Kahn. I'm director of research for a project called Timeship. You'll find us at timeship.org, involved with cryonics and life extension. I do online courses at Build Academy, a regular weekly radio show on prn.fm, and I blog at visionarycreativity.com and johnlobell.com, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with Twitter and Facebook. So what is visionary creativity? In working on my book, I read all the other books and found that for the most part, they didn't deal with creativity. They dealt with mastery. You might have heard of the 10,000 hours thing, which is important to master something, but that's not creativity. Innovation is important, but it's not creativity. And even creativity there are a lot of things that are creative, but I'm looking at visionary creativity, which is the making of new worlds. And we have to see things in a cultural context. So we live in cultures, which are meaning systems. Cultures create us, and in a virtuous circle, we create our cultures. Visionary creatives change cultures and thereby bring us new meaning systems, new worlds. And in so doing, and we're not always happy about this, they destroy old worlds. So let's look at our emerging 21st century, and we'll look at three developments in science and see how these developments are making new worlds for us. So first, Bell's theory. You might have heard of Bell's theorem. John Bell in the 1960s worked with Einstein and Rosen and Podolsky's, it's called the EPR paradox from the 30s. And what he did was he laid the groundwork for showing what entanglement is. That if particles get entangled, they reflect each other instantly, even across the universe, which tells us that the universe is wired up, put together totally differently than we had thought. Lynn Margulies presents the idea of symbiogenesis, the notion that creatures are not discrete but are continually moving DNA around between and among them all the time. And then finally, Stephen Wolfram, who works with genomics, the idea beyond DNA that simple rules make our rich and varied universe. So one of Stephen Wolfram's quotes that I just love, he says, "I think when I find the code that generates our world, it'll be just about 6 lines." So 6 lines of computer-like code generate our entire universe and us. What a way of thinking. Let's try to find a metaphor that'll help us think in this way. And so I'll look at Seurat's Sunday Afternoon in the Park. That's an abbreviated title. And as we all know, the figures in the painting look classical, look substantial, and look formal. But if we zoom in on them, we find that they are actually just fuzzy dots. And the implication being that the world and we are clusters of interconnected fractal networks computationally generating themselves and each other. So that's what I want to suggest our emerging 21st century is all about. In this world, for example, we might wonder about our communication devices. My first Macintosh was the first model, and I had a modem, but it was seldom hooked up. And so it was isolated. It was not plugged in, so to speak. Today, my iPhone is not only plugged in, I can't unplug it in. I try to download my iTunes music onto my iPhone, and it says you can't. You already have that song in the cloud. I don't want it in the cloud. I want it on my iPhone. You can't do that. Everything is plugged in. So then we ask, how powerful is our iPhone? And it's called infinite computing. We're plugged into the cloud. We have access to all the other devices plugged into this cloud. So this is our emerging world of Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, all interconnected, tied together in these fractal networks. And then when we look at the emerging businesses, institutions that are going to dominate our new world, we think, for example, of Zuckerberg's Facebook. I think it's just beginning what they're going to do. So it starts by you join, you link to friends, then you post pictures, then you link to pictures. If you try to imagine everything on Facebook that's linked to everything else and draw a line between all the links, it gets very dense. And in fact, that's not how computer scientists think. It would be too dense to put on a piece of paper, and so it goes into infinite dimensions. Elon Musk, we know him for SpaceX and Tesla, but Tesla's not just about electric cars. It's about self-driving cars. And self-driving cars are not going to just know that the car in front of us is slowing down and we should slow down. It's going to know that somebody's finishing breakfast and on their schedule it's that they are taking a certain route and there's going to be too much traffic and we should take a different route. Everything will be interconnected. And Jeff Bezos, Amazon, I think we're not even seeing the beginning of what he's going to be doing with Amazon. So how do we become a visionary creative? How do we think this way? How do we enter into the worlds of figures like this? A while back, an op-ed in the New York Times caught my eye. How to Raise a Creative Child. Step 1, Back Off, by Adam Grant. And it begins, they learn to read at age 2, play Bach at 4, breeze through calculus at 6, and speak foreign languages fluently by 8. But to paraphrase T.S. Eliot, their careers tend to end, not with a bang but a whimper. Child prodigies rarely become adult geniuses who change the world. What holds them back is that they don't learn to be original. So you might know some children like this, some children of some of your colleagues who are going to the fanciest prep schools on their way to Ivy colleges, on their way to top law schools or MBAs, on their way to top consulting or law firms. You don't get on that path by telling your teachers that they're full of baloney. You don't have that career by challenging accepted ideas. You have that career by, what's the term, going along to getting along? So let's think about how we might become creative and not be held back and to learn to be an original. So visionary creatives swim in the culture of their day and manifest in their work the spirit of their age. The things they create in art, design, science, technology, business, fashion, embody that spirit and at the same time pull us into the future. Now this sums up what I'm talking about. But there's a lot here that we don't live in an objective reality. We live in a culture, and cultures change. And visionary creatives are the agents that change those cultures, and at the same time have to be changed by their cultures. So it's this rich, interrelated process. And it suggests different ways of thinking about reality. So one of our great philosophers, Jose Ortega y Gasset, writes, "The reality of history lies in biological power, in pure vitality, in what is in man of cosmic energy, not identical with, but related to the energy which agitates the sea, fecundates the beast, causes the tree to flower and the star to shine." This suggests an entirely new way of thinking about the world and thinking about creativity. And it's a way that's totally not accessible in academia. Social scientists, psychologists, sociologists cannot talk about cosmic energy. I mean, what is a psychologist going to measure the cosmic energy in their rats before and after they run them through mazes? These are terms we use in the arts, but are totally absent in psychology and sociology. Psychology and sociology cannot comprehend or deal with the arts and cannot therefore comprehend or deal with creativity. Joseph Campbell writes, "Myth is the secret opening through which the inexhaustible energies of the cosmos pour into cultural manifestations." Psychologists can't measure the inexhaustible energies of the cosmos, but that's what we as creators have to live with, live within, deal with. And Van Gogh wrote, "Wings, wings to fly above life, wings to fly above the grave and death. That is what we want, and I am beginning to understand that we can get them." So this is the way artists think. This is the way artists exist. This is the way artists are in the world. And we have to learn to be able to think and enter into this way of thinking and of being. So for this approach to creativity, let's not look at the psychologist, but let's look at a philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his Thus Spoke Zarathustra, writes about the three metamorphoses of the spirit. How the spirit becomes a camel, and the camel a lion, and the lion finally a child. So the camel says, "Put a load on me." The camel kneels down and takes on a load. That's the beginning of your career when you master your discipline, you master the culture, you engage in learning, you take on and master the existing culture of your field. So if we look at some of the mega bestsellers of recent times, they're about mastery. They're not about creativity. We'll see in a moment what they're missing. How many here have a tiger mom? Okay, it's homework 7 days a week, no play dates. So here's Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom. Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, where he talks about mastering your discipline. And he didn't originate it, but he talks about what we call the 10,000 hours thing. And then Angela Duckworth in her book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. But she talks about people who become special forces or football quarterbacks. These are people who master their discipline, but they don't change it. They don't create the new. So these books are not about creating the new. They end with the camel. Now you might recall that Woodrow Wilson was not only president, but before that governor of New Jersey, and before that president of Princeton University. And he wrote, "It is the business of a university to impart the right thought of the world, the thought through which it has tested and established the principles which have stood through the seasons and become at length part of the immemorial wisdom of the race." Okay, that's important, but that's mastery. That ends with the camel. How about to question, and if need be, to overthrow the immemorial wisdom of the race? Such questioning and overthrowing define visionary creativity. The camel runs out into the desert and becomes a lion who would conquer his freedom and be master of his own desert. And the lion's job is to battle a dragon. The lion wants to fight the great dragon. "Thou shalt" is the name of the great dragon, but the spirit of the lion says, "I will." So the dragon, on every scale of which is written "thou shalt," is the culture which you have mastered. It is your masters who you have come to love and come to emulate, but then you have to fight and overthrow them. And that is the job of the lion. So we see that in the creative figures whom we respect. Beethoven mastered the Viennese Symphony before launching Romanticism. Picasso mastered classical painting by the time he dropped out of the academy. Thelonious Monk worked with the jazz greats in the creation of bebop before entering his own world. And one of my teachers, Robert Venturi, understood the modernism he attacked better than did his critics. But the lion cannot create the new. To create new values, the lion is not capable of this. But to create the freedom to create the new, this is within the lion's power. And the lion then becomes a child. The child is innocent and forgetting, a new beginning. The child is a wheel rolling out of its own center. So, what about you? Let's go back to how to raise a creative child. They learn to read by age 2, play Bach at 4, but what holds them back is they don't learn to be original. Adam Grant goes on to say, evidence shows that creative contributions depend on the breadth, not just depth, of our knowledge and experience. Relative to typical scientists, Nobel Prize winners are 22 times more likely to perform as actors, dancers, or magicians. In fashion, the most original collections come from directors who spend the most time working abroad. So in my book, I look at all these different fields: science and mathematics, architecture, art, writing, filmmaking. Look at culture, musicians, people in technology and business. So ask yourself, what is obvious to everyone else but does not seem quite right to you? I've become a big fan of Peter Thiel, and this is his favorite question in an interview. He asks it a little bit differently. He says, what do you believe that almost nobody else believes? Do you have the courage to even believe something that other people don't believe? And if you do you have the courage to do something about it? Or do you figure you better keep quiet? So what if you don't keep quiet? What if you then ask, what if? You'll feel a nascent world struggling to be born. You'll wonder, what is wrong with others that they do not also feel this? It'll become clear what you must create so that others will feel what you feel. They will object, but after they encounter what you create, they will be changed and they will be in a new world in a new way. So if you were fortunate enough to see the show Savage Beauty at the Met Museum, the work of Alexander McQueen, on leaving the show, you read a quote from him: "This is the birth of a new dawn. There is no way back for me now. I'm going to take you on journeys you've never dreamed were possible." Thank you.